Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Wanted to say hello and jump in with you guys. I'm Danna Bowman, co-founder of Thyroid Refresh, and we have an exciting guest for you tonight.
We're here today with Dr. Keesha Ewers. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is one of my very favorite discussions, so I'm really happy to be here.
Well, just for the listeners, we want to talk today with Dr. Ewers about how to reverse an autoimmune thyroid condition like Graves' or Hashimoto's. Is it possible, and what does it take? So I know there's some of you out there thinking, I don't have an autoimmune condition, so this doesn't apply to me, but you may need to think again. Statistics have shown that over 90% of us who have been diagnosed with hypothyroidism, in fact, have Hashimoto. So this information applies to a lot more of us than we might realize. And of course, we have a lot of Graves patients in our community as well. So I know there's a lot of listeners who are going to be really grateful for this information. Before we dive in, I want to make a quick announcement that our Thyroid 30 Fall Wellness Adventure is enrolling this week. This is the last week for enrollment. We would love to have you guys join us, so don't miss out on this amazing adventure. We have a lot of veteran players coming back. We're always excited to have new players, and I know it's going to be a great season. Fall is such a good time to be getting back in touch with our healthy routines and healthy habits. So if you want to learn more or sign up, you can go to thyroidrefresh.com/thyroid30 to do that.
Without further ado, though, I want to introduce Dr. Keesha Ewers because she's one of my favorites, and I actually had the pleasure of meeting her in person, not just over video, last month at a conference we were at. It was just so much fun and so wonderful. She is the founder of the Academy for Integrative Medicine, an integrative medicine expert, doctor of sexology, psychotherapist, board-certified functional medicine provider, Ayurvedic practitioner, medicine woman, best-selling author, speaker, and mother of 4. And look at how great she looks.
Thank you. I love how you went sexology.
Well, right?
Yeah, so that it's so interesting because people always say, "Why sexology?" And it actually leads into this conversation really well because I would have all these women and some men coming in to see me in my office and saying, "I hear you prescribe bioidentical hormone replacements, and I, saw my sister, friend, daughter, mother that you gave them to, and she looks fabulous, and I want some of that." And when I would say, "So why is it that you think you need hormones?" they would say things like, "Well, my libido's gone," or, I have cognitive brain fog, whatever it is. And when I would start asking questions like, "Well, when's the last time you had a libido level that you were happy with?" "Oh, I've never had one." And I would say, estrogen and progesterone and testosterone are not going to help that if it's never been there. Or, "Do you like your partner that you're having sex with?" "Oh, tears, he had an affair 5 years ago. And I've forgiven him, but I don't really want to have sex with him. My libido's gone." And again, I would say, hormones don't really help that. And so
there's not a pill for that.
Yeah, there's not a pill for that. And so I went back to school and got a PhD doing this study called Healing Unresolved Trauma because I was seeing that was such a huge factor. And I see it in Hashimoto's and Graves too. So, it's this really nice segue into the conversation because energetically your thyroid, is your throat, and being able to speak and articulate your needs. I find that, 80% of Hashimoto's is diagnosed in women. And so often culturally women are not encouraged to speak up and speak out and also to be caregivers. I've kind of seen these 3 P's that are present in everyone with autoimmune disease, whether or not you own it or not. It's perfectionism, people pleasing, and the pain of past hurt. And that all 3 of those P's have to be addressed before it can actually be reversed. And so, we're always looking for the hormone or the pill or, all of that is important. But then there's also this other piece that I call the missing piece to the puzzle that has to be dealt with if you're truly going to get a reversal.
Wow. I love that. So it's what are the 3 P's again?
Perfectionism. And, it's also often like I'll have a patient in my office and I'll say, did you know you had an autoimmune disease called Hashimoto's, and they would say, oh, what? What's that? And I'd say, so you've been on levothyroxine for 15 years and no one's ever tested to see if it's autoimmune? I don't even know what that means. I said, okay, well, let's start from the beginning, and then I will start to talk about these 3 Ps, that are present in everyone with autoimmune disease. Because I always say you can absolutely reverse this. And I have to address these 3 things. And so I'll start to talk about it a little bit and they'll say, oh, perfectionism. I am so not a perfectionist. Do you know how far away that I am from being a perfectionist? And I always laugh because it's like, to a perfectionist, the bar is really high and you're nowhere near it, right?
Right.
And
That's funny.
Okay, well, this is exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, can you say the 3 Ps for us again?
Perfectionism, people pleasing, the huge one, right? Because we're caregiving everybody else and not putting ourselves up at the top of the to-do list. And then the pain of past, I call it poison, that's held onto from past pain. So it's past trauma. It's how you're dealing and perceiving your current day stress, how you even perceive yourself. That's called neuroception, not perception, but like how you see yourself and then your perception of how you are in the world with everyone else and the circumstances. So, that's how you're perceiving your stress levels. Because actually, if you go through this physiology, if we think about the anatomy and physiology of the thyroid and the immune system's relationship to the thyroid, it's actually what happens here, how you're perceiving and again, your neuroception, how you see yourself, that sets up the brain's biochemical response, the release of neurotransmitters that then tell the pituitary, right, what to do, the hypothalamus, the thyroid, the adrenal glands, the ovaries, the pancreas, the entire endocrine system. Oftentimes people with Graves and Hashimoto's are going to an endocrinologist who's just focusing here. And that's just so inaccurate, right? So I always say that Hashimoto's and Graves are not diseases of the thyroid. They're diseases of the immune system attacking the thyroid. That's something totally different.
Who just said that to us, Jenny? Someone just said that. Was it Dr. Jolene Brighton? Who was that? Someone just said the same exact thing like 2 or 3 days ago. It's amazing that you just said that because that's not how people look at it, and that's truly what it is.
So when I give lectures, I'll show a slide of a bullseye target that's on a tree, and then there's an arrow that's zooming toward it. And I always say, like in the standard American model of care, we go around and we try and move the target around the forest, like to keep it away from the arrow, instead of actually going up to the archer and saying, hey, do you mind not shooting arrows? And it's like, we're just not dealing with the immune system. We're trying to move the target around. And that's why once you have one autoimmune diagnosis, you have a 75% chance of getting more, accumulating autoimmunity. And it's not because you're just that messed up. You have to kind of go back to Ayurvedic medicine, which is the sister science of yoga. It's this 10,000-year-old framework of medicine that said a long time ago, we're not all the same. And, that actually there are 6 different tissue layers in our bodies called dhatus. And there's the outer one, which would be like your skin. They call it your plasma layer. And then it goes down, 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 all the way to your reproductive system. And each one of those layers is built off of proper digestion. Now, the thing that is really different and that I loved, that really got me to reverse my own autoimmune disease within 6 months was, this understanding that I'm not just having to digest the food I put in my mouth, but I also have to digest my feelings, my beliefs, my experiences, that all of that, your memories, all of that has to be digested properly too. And I went, what? Digest my feelings? And then the other thing Ayurvedic medicine said that changed my life forever was that all people with autoimmune disease have undigested anger. And I remember reading that going, I'm not an angry person. because I was a total people pleaser, which means who got the anger?
Right.
The body,
Mhm.
right?
Ah.
And so no one outside me was receiving that anger. It was all going internal, and I wasn't digesting it. So that was a really interesting way of putting this into a context of, when we just get limited to it's about leaky gut, or it's about gluten, or it's about the toxins in the environment, or Epstein-Barr virus, we're actually missing the whole boat, right? We have a piece of it, but you're not getting very far with just a steering wheel, right? Or just a rudder. You actually need to look at the entire thing. So I always think about it then as solving the puzzle of your autoimmunity, and every single one of us is very different. So the four corners of the puzzle include your genetics. That's the first corner piece. When you're actually solving a puzzle, you actually turn over the corner pieces first, right? And then you find all the edge pieces. So the corner piece is going to be your genetics, which each one of us are different. So you can't ever say that there's one size that fits all when you're thinking about reversing autoimmunity, right? The second one will be your digestive health, like leaky gut, definitely a player. The third one is going to be toxic exposure. That'll include viruses and bacteria. It'll also include all the chemicals in the environment, the estrogen mimickers and disruptors, all of those genetically modified foods, pesticides, and also your toxic beliefs and your toxic feelings and the resentment you have from not having forgiveness for something in your past. Those are toxins too. And then the fourth corner piece of the puzzle is trauma and how you perceive your life today, in terms of like how you deal with your stress and how you feel in terms of, are you always overwhelmed? Research shows that people that report themselves as chronically overscheduled and chronically stressed actually have the same shrinkage in the adult brain damage, right? And that means that the executive function, the prefrontal cortex, reduces in volume, while the amygdala, the part of you that's all about fight or flight, grows in volume when you think of yourself as stressed out. Now, that's the same exact changes that happen in somebody that has PTSD. So those two are the same in how it impacts your genetics, your gut, and your immune system. So that's why all four pieces have to be dealt with at the same time, because they interchange with each other, right? Toxins affect how you upregulate certain genes. So does stress. Stress affects your digestive health. Cortisol breaks down your gut wall. So you can't just deal with one of them at a time. You have to do the whole thing, and it has to be very individualized and very personalized. That's why I always say test, don't guess. Gather your data, and then connect the dots between your lifestyle choices and that data. Okay, so what am I doing in my life that's creating this gene to express the way it is? Because I can actually change that and make it not express itself. My grandfather had rheumatoid arthritis. So when I was 30, I'm 54 right now, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. I went to see a doctor. She quizzed me, went through my family history, said, do you have any history of family autoimmune disease? I said, yeah, I think my grandfather had it. In fact, he died at age 54. I just thought.
Wow.
At my age, right? In a wheelchair with RA. And I said, yeah. And so she said, oh, okay. And then she gave me this, you have rheumatoid arthritis. Here are 2 prescriptions. One's for methotrexate and one's for a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. Come back when you get worse, not if, and we'll change your meds, right? And I said, is there anything else I could do? I'm really disciplined. I'll eat, I can change my diet. And it was like, nope, it's genetic, right? So that means close the book, put it on the shelf. That's it. So, that's what people are hearing. You have Hashimoto's, you have Graves. Eventually your thyroid's going to wear out. So here's a pill. And then, we just have to keep an eye on it. And that's how it goes, right?
Or just you have hypothyroidism, and
Yes.
I'm not going to test you even for Hashimoto's. That was my story for 4 years. My doctor didn't test me for it, even though she knew I probably had it, because it wouldn't have changed her treatment protocol of levothyroxine and TSH testing only. Meanwhile, I'm like, my life is a mess. I can't I can barely function.
Right.
And I'm miserable and sick all the
I know.
time,
I know.
and it's not a unique story,
No,
No.
know?
the usual story that I hear, because by the
Yeah.
time people get to me, they're usually pretty angry. A lot of times they've seen a lot of functional
anger.
medicine.
Anger.
Yeah, anger. And that doesn't help anything, right?
No.
Being mad at the system is actually making it worse for your thyroid.
Right.
And so by the time they come to me, they've seen probably a couple of functional medicine practitioners who have given them testing, and they've spent thousands of dollars on food and supplement protocols, and they're still not better. And it's because that piece that is around your own perception of yourself, your people pleasing, your perfectionism, your past pain hasn't been dealt with. That's why I call it like the 3 Ps that are really left out of the equation for most people.
I love
your emphasis on the emotional healing piece and the
Mhm.
emotional support piece. What are your favorite modalities for getting there, for doing that healing? Are you like, go find a therapist, go do NLP, or what's
forest bathing. What's your
favorite?
So this is a really interesting question, because as with everything, I'm going to say it depends. There's not one size fits all, right?
Sure.
Because if you look up on the internet and you look for an EMDR therapist near me, 9 times out of 10, you'll go and you're not going to be a good fit for the therapist. And when I give talks to doctors from stage, I say, this is how your patients are going to look at this. I need green shoes to match my dress. So I'm going to go shopping for green shoes. They go into the shoe store, they find a cute pair of green shoes, they try them on, they walk around a little bit, and then they say, oh, this is tight. There's no way I'm going to last in a wedding. So they try on a couple more pair and they still can't find them. They don't actually just walk out the door barefooted and say, shoes don't work for me. But I see that all the time when it comes to therapy, right?
Well, this doesn't work for me. I tried it. It didn't work.
Exactly. I hear it all the time. And so I'm always warning doctors, like, this is what you're going to hear, right? And the thing of it is people expect therapy, just like supplements and pills, to be a magic bullet. It is not. It is supposed to be something quite different from that. And so what I do is I do trauma healing retreats that are a group process that are amazing, because you're in a tribe of other people that are holding space. If you were Mayan in Guatemala in a village and you had some emotional pain that you had, what the Mayans say is any kind of autoimmunity, cancer, disease is petrified sorrow. Oh, I love that. Petrified sorrow.
Wow.
And if you were in that village, your job as a citizen of that village that you would know for yourself because you were raised in that village is that it's your responsibility to come and help witness the sorrow for this person. And by witnessing the sorrow, actually helping with like crying and moving through it and supporting in group, right? We don't have that. And so what I've created is a group dynamic where I do a trauma healing process, and then each person witnesses the other's healing, so that a lot of times, the women after the end of it will go, I didn't even know I still had untapped layers in there of healing that needed to happen until I heard her story. So I know, right? Because we have some fairly common stories as humans that we go through, and we make up meanings and beliefs about them, which then affect our behavior in adulthood. And those have to be shifted, and your brain has to be rewired. And so there's not one modality that I use with my patients. I assess where they're at and then go from there. So there's a program that I put together called You Unbroken. It's on my website. It's very inexpensive. And in it, I say, okay, do this. If you can't do it, you need to find a therapist. Here's how you find a therapist. Here's what you do to make sure you're a good fit. You don't want to be buddies with your therapist. If you've been going to a therapist for several years, I always say that's not doing you any good anymore. Like, you need someone that's going to hold your feet to the fire, right? And really do what I call like the Aikido flip, right? Aikido is assessing what your partner's weaknesses are and using them to strengthen, right? And so you kind of like be in a dance in concert with it. And so it shouldn't take that long to move through your stuff. If you do talk therapy, it doesn't work. You know, you can go out with your girlfriends and talk about what's hurting you, but really doing that kind of work, and we do, it's a whole process with you're actually integrating mind, body, heart, and spirit. So in You Unbroken, it actually helps you to kind of assess where you're at, and you might be able to do it all on your own. I always say it's your own trauma work, and if you can get through all of it, perfect. But then I always say, if you can't do this, it's a hard stop. You need to get a coach. And I always say therapy is borrowing a brain, you know, from somebody who is professionally trained to see patterns and then be able to interrupt them. So that's what you're after. Because in my book, Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle, I have this graphic. It's my favorite graphic that I've created. And it's a dog chasing its tail around and around. And then next to it is a brain chasing its spinal cord around and around. And I always say, you know, dogs chase their TAIL, and then people chase their TALE, right? Their
Mhm,
right?
Mm-hmm. Clever.
mhm.
And the
I
same
like that.
mind that created the problem can't come up with the solution, you know?
Mhm.
And so you've got to get outside of yourself and have somebody kind of look at that and help you with the pattern recognition, so that then you get a process of rewiring and then reframing, and then you have to go practice it. And that's another thing that our culture is not huge on. We actually want a one and done, and that's not possible. So, yeah.
You've just answered so many of my questions already, you know, like
Right.
I was going to ask, what's the number one thing that you feel, you know, obviously the healing journey is not one thing, it's all the things, right? What's the
Right.
most underestimated piece? Would you say it's that emotional
I
part?
do,
I mean,
but
yeah.
there's, you know, sometimes people will then say, "Oh, I just need to do emotional work," and I say, "No." Like when I hold a retreat, we do all their testing and their genetic testing beforehand. Then they come to my space on San Juan Island off the coast of Washington, where they're all together, and then I follow up with them afterwards, and we're going through their test results so that they're doing, you know, when I was in private practice in the very beginning. I remember I was only in for about 3 months working with patients when I started realizing I need to actually get psychotherapy training. This is ridiculous. Like, I can't treat someone's GERD without treating the underlying anxiety. And I don't want to give them anxiety that's just like, here's a Xanax, right?
Right.
That's really not doing it. And so I realized I had to do this. And so I learned that our attempts to separate each of our systems the way that we do, the mind from the body, the thyroid from the pancreas, you know, all the gut from everything else, we're compartmentalizing, and it doesn't work. We're not that. We are a whole system, right? And so it's not that emotional work is more important. It's just that it works in concert with the whole thing. And that it is probably the most under recognized and implemented. And that you do actually have to go back and redo all that expensive testing.
Yeah.
Right? And then see where you're at today, and then do the emotional work alongside it. Because if your hormones and your adrenals and your thyroid are off, the therapy that you do doesn't stick. Okay? If you're emotionally dysregulated, then all the work you're doing over here with your hormones and your thyroid and your adrenals doesn't stick. And so you have to have them both balanced in order for you to gain some traction and keep moving up the wellness ladder.
That just really rings true. You know, I've been lucky to have some great, you know, emotional support experiences with psychotherapists and like NLP, and I've had those breakthrough moments, right?
Good.
And you leave, and it's like you just feel like lighter all around, like you weigh less.
I know.
And
I always
I'm
tell
listening
people,
to you.
everyone's so afraid of it. And I always say it's frightening when you first start, right? Remember the anxiety of first starting? Then you feel that. And you go, all right,
That's
go.
it. Game on.
And it's some of the hardest, like, you know, you're in there sweating, you're crying, it's messy, you know, but it's just it's just a good reminder, because I don't do enough of that. And I think so many of us don't. And I, you know, just thinking about that feeling, the weighted feeling, and the, becoming lighter. And then you're hearing now that 90% of Americans are going to be overweight or obese by 2050. What does that say about how we're doing as human beings in this culture? Not well at all. And I have to take the right supplements and eat the right foods and go to bed on time, and all of those things are part of it. But if I'm just saying, I don't want to be in there sweating bullets and crying and going, and just trying to put that over there.
You actually don't have to be sweating bullets and crying. People are always worried that, I had sexual abuse when I was 10. The vice principal of my elementary school sexually abused me. And when I started making the connection between my autoimmune disease at 30 and my experience at 10, I went, because the word autoimmune, you guys have to really hear this. Autoimmune means I'm attacking me. That means you want to die. You're committing suicide. It means it's not coming from outside of you. It's coming from inside of you. It's not running around frantically looking for a solution outside of you. That's why I always say this is mystic medicine. The mystery is hidden not from you, but by you. And so when I started really asking myself, I was meditating one day. I just learned to meditate, and I saw this word autoimmune dancing in front of my third eye space, and I went, oh, and I got what I just said. And I said, when's the first time I wanted to die? Because I certainly didn't want to die in that point. I had 4 kids. I was happy, So I started tracing what I call the breadcrumb trail, backwards to a place where I wanted to die. And I found that 10-year-old little girl. And I thought, oh, she wanted to die. She didn't have the language for abuse or molesting or, I didn't even know those words. Sex, I didn't even know what that meant at the age of 10. It was a very different era. And so I just remember looking at her sitting on this patio outside of our house. I was a Navy brat, and I was under a palm tree in Key West, Florida. I remember looking at her just like she really wanted to die. And I went, okay, this has to be connected. And it was true. I had told my cells that I wanted out. I was communicating with angels and with, other beings in the world at that time, because why? I didn't think the world was safe. I always say that when people are highly intuitive and psychic, they have trauma in their background. It's like, is anyone listening? And then you start to be able to pick up the frequency of other dimensions, right? And so definitely I saw the connection. And so then I thought, okay, and I went into the research, and it shows it takes anywhere from 10 to 30 years to develop a full-blown autoimmune disease. And I went, yeah, it was like exactly 20 years. It was like I had a turkey timer in me. You're done, right?
Yeah.
And I got that it was connected. And sure enough, science tells us that through the Adverse Childhood Experiences study, right? That exactly what I had figured out back then was accurate scientifically. And so when I started working on that piece, I've never dealt with this, right? I didn't even think it had any bearing on my current day life. I was sexually healthy. I was, I didn't even think it could have anything to do with anything. And when I saw that, I understood, this has something to do with it. And so, I always say now that sexual abuse, I know people are going to hate hearing this, sexual abuse, rheumatoid arthritis, some of the best things that ever happened to me in my life, because it helps in my own evolution of consciousness, right? I had to learn all of these tools. I had to go in and I remember being in therapy, and I've been doing quite a bit of therapy for some time after I learned about this, and going, oh, really? I'm here again? In the process. And my therapist looking at me and going, oh, you have to understand that when you're a child, you dig this deep mine shaft down into the ground. You're in this black hole in these instances, right? And then as an adult, you have to be willing to go back down there again. And that's where you pull up the gems. It's called, she goes, it's called wisdom, my darling. And I went, that makes so much sense, right? And so it's not really about bullets and tears and it's just
right.
That's where my gems come from, right?
Yes.
That's where I really get wisdom. That's where my compassionate nature that's actually authentically compassionate, not because I'm being nice, because that's my strategy in life, that if I'm nice, then you'll make me safe, or you'll like me, or you'll respect or love me. No, it's like my compassionate nature that says compassionately, you're not very good for me in my life. That's a toxic relationship, so I need to have a boundary. That's compassion, right? The ability to say no. My compassionate nature to let somebody not off the hook when they're behaving in a way that's destructive, right? That's compassion. I learned like what compassion really was, you know, and then self-compassion meant not taking a bubble bath or even a detox bath, but actually being willing to confront my own shadow. And 6 months is all it took, and my autoimmune disease was gone, and it's never been back.
Incredible.
Yeah.
It's such an embracing way to look at it too. You know, we're always talking about like trying to make that shift from an attitude of aggression towards our bodies and what do I have to fix and I'm broken, towards an attitude of self-compassion and just embracing ourselves with our histories, both good and bad, because they are what makes us who we are. We have on our advisory board, we have a resident psychotherapist, Nadia Ahrens. She was here earlier.
She was on earlier, yeah.
Yeah, and she calls it, she and I both went through traumatic deaths in our family, each of our families. And so we've talked about this a lot together. And she calls it transformational trauma.
Yep.
And the butterfly.
Post-traumatic growth instead of post-traumatic stress.
Right.
Yeah.
I love that.
That was spot on.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, that's, and you're like, there are two words that you have to make that happen. One is the willingness to self-confront. This is what my hurt model shows. You can either go into victim and stay there and just keep having the same stuff go on and on and on, ruminating on what I call automatic negative thoughts and hurt and pain, and then you'll just get sicker and sicker. Or the willingness to self-confront. And then the integration component of what you learn, actually practicing it and not thinking that, oh, this is too much work, you know, that you actually have to keep your eye on the prize, which is your wellness, right? And so that integration component is the part that gets dropped a lot. You have to have attention and intention, right? And that creates will, because people will say, I don't have any willpower. And I say, well, there are two parts of will, attention and intention, right? Willingness and integration. And so it doesn't have to be hard. It can be quite effortless.
Yeah.
Having the intention and keeping the attention on it.
Oh, I love that way of putting that.
Ooh, yeah.
You know, that's what coming back to Thyroid 30, that's what we're trying to help people do, is bring more attention and intention into their daily choices. But I never thought of it as those two as the combination of what equals will.
Yep.
That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Oh, you're so welcome. My battery's going to die. So
okay. Yes.
Yeah. It's time to go.
No, I mean, you have to be patient while I plug in. I just wanted to say why there's a little fidgeting happening over here.
Okay. Well, I'm sure we could talk into the wee hours of the morning.
Yes, we could.
Trust me, I would love to. Let's just go right into like a retreat. Let's do this. I'm ready.
I mean, so am I, big time.
Can you tell us, like, so you went through this with, was it just RA? Did you have other autoimmune issues, or like, where are you at now with that?
I don't have any autoimmune disease. Yeah, I was able to reverse it and keep it gone. And it's been 24 years. So, wow. But I'll tell you what did happen was 10 years later, my son came to me. So remember, I have 4 kids, right? And 10 years after I'd reversed my RA, he came and he said, Mom, I need you to sit down. I got to tell you something. And I was like, oh. And he was home from college. And so he was a freshman in college. So he was like 18, 19. And he said, do you remember, you know, the neighborhood boy that you used to have babysit us sometimes when you'd go to the grocery store, you know? And I said, yes. And he said, well, he sexually molested me and Cameron, his older brother, when they were 3 and 5. And I said, and of course, like I completely lost it because this is something that of course was my fault. Right. And I was just like, just shattered. And so I said to him, why didn't you tell me this before? And he said, because of this. Like he's watching me completely go into a shame meltdown, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, okay. And he said, I do not want my childhood defined by this, these couple of instances. And so I actually said, okay. And so I went and I looked up this kid who had been 12 at the time and found him. And he was at college or in graduate school, and I said, called him up and said, this is Keesha Ewers. And he said, oh, I've been waiting for this call for 15 years. Ooh. And I said, okay, so I have a couple questions for you, and so I started asking him and he just said, so sorry. I was just curious. And we'd gotten a hold of Playboy, me and my friends, and I was, so experimenting. And I said, okay. And so I said, here's what I need from you. And so we did this amazing, like I had him pay for therapy for them. And then we did this amazing over time forgiveness process that's in my book, Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle. It's an incredible process. And I did it with him. And my kids did it with him. And it turned out to be the most incredible thing, right? But 4 months after Colin sat me down and told me about this, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And I had this big old hairy tumor right in my left breast, right over my heart, right? And when the ultrasound wand was over it and I was looking at this really beautiful blood supply to it, it was so healthy. I went, I know why that's there. I know exactly why that's there. I said, give me a month and then I'll contact an oncologist. And so I actually spent that month doing all of the stuff I needed to do to forgive myself. So I'd forgiven him, but boy, that was the hardest work I've ever done in my entire life. And I had to like really, really do this really intense work. I did energy work and I did the big time forgiveness work and therapy with it. So in a month it was gone. I went back in, had another ultrasound, and the vascular supply to that tumor, it was just like hanging there and there was an empty space. It was completely gone. In 1
Incredible.
month.
It just gave me goosebumps.
I knew. I said, oh my gosh, I made that thing completely out of my resentment, my shame, my guilt, my pain, and just, I knew what I had to do to destructure it. Right. Mm-hmm. I had put structure to that emotional garbage and I knew what I needed to do to undo it. Now, people will sometimes hear that story and go, so Dr. Keesha's saying, that all you have to do is think it away. And I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. Everybody's different. I was already eating as clean as you possibly can. I already was doing all the other work because I'd healed my RA 10 years before and I walked my talk. It was already in place, all the healthy stuff, right? The only thing out of balance for me was this emotional component. And I already knew what undigested anger did to the body because I'd witnessed it and I'd already had to work on it for myself. So, it was just like I was in a collaborative relationship with my body at that point. Autoimmunity means that you're at war with yourself. You're in a combative relationship. And so I already was in a collaborative relationship. So I could look at that tumor and I could say, oh, baby, I know exactly where you came from, and not be sad, not be scared, not be anything. Just like it's information.
Right.
Here's where your emotions are. You better get to work. You went out and you helped your kids. You helped him. You did all the work for the family. Now you got to do you. Right.
Wow. What an amazing story. Fabulous.
Yeah. So amazing. I'm just like speechless. Mm-hmm. It's such important and juicy. It's such an important and juicy topic, and one that really, I think, doesn't get talked about enough. The mind, body, and spirit connection and how it manifests in us with illness.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that story. Mm-hmm.
Definitely. Wow.
Well, thank you again, guys. This is Dr. Keesha Ewers. It's been such a privilege and a pleasure having you on with us today. Thank you for being here with us and for sharing with our audience.
Thanks for the platform you've created for people to heal. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you.
Well, if you guys are interested in joining us for Thyroid 30, again, we are currently enrolling for our fall wellness adventure. You can sign up at thyroidrefresh.com/thyroid30. We'll put a link in the comments for you. And tomorrow we're going to be back again bright and early for another Facebook Live. This one is going to be with McCall McPherson of Modern Thyroid Clinic. She's also now the head honch at Thyroid Nation. Danna has officially passed the baton. So she'll be talking with us about synthetic versus natural thyroid medications, and is NDT really the answer to your prayers? So that's going to be at 7:30 a.m. Pacific tomorrow. That's 8:30 Mountain, 9:30 Central,
10:30 Eastern. Yep.
So we'll see you guys back here again tomorrow morning. It's a really fun and exciting week here at Thyroid Refresh. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you again to Dr. Keesha Ewers, and we will see you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.